One night, one moment, and boom. Lola Falana was banned from The Tonight Show. Not skipped, not maybe next season, straight up blacklisted. She wasn't just a performer, she was a force. So what did she do that rattled Johnny Carson's people so hard they slammed the door behind her? Buckle up, because this story's got attitude, controversy, and a legend who refused to play by the rules. But before we do, let's take a look at the legend. Lola's youth. Most kids spend their junior high years stressing over math homework. Lola Falana? She was already dancing in nightclubs with her mom as her chaperone. That tells you everything you need to know about the fire this woman carried from the jump. Long before she was dazzling audiences in Vegas or rattling the nerves of late-night royalty, Lola was lighting up Camden, New Jersey. Born into a working-class family as the third of 6 children, Lola came from a family that hustled on both sides. Her dad, a proud Afro-Cuban who traded island life for a career in the U.S. Marine Corps, ended up working as a welder. Her mom, an African-American seamstress, was the backbone of the family and apparently down to roll with her daughter to late-night dance gigs before Lola even had a diploma. By the time she was barely out of diapers, Lola was already moving to her own rhythm, dancing at 3, singing solos in the church choir at 5. She wasn't just the talented one. She was a full-blown prodigy with no interest in waiting her turn. In 1952, the Falana crew packed up and moved to Philadelphia. That's where things really kicked off. Most teens might sneak into clubs. Lola? She was performing in them, with her mom sitting in the front row, making sure things didn't get too wild. During the day, she was technically still a student at Germantown High, but mentally, she had already clocked out. Music and performance weren't hobbies for her. They were the only future she saw. Not one to wait on permission, Lola made a bold move that would have scared the curls off most parents. She quit school just shy of graduating and headed for New York City. That decision was scandalous at the time and set the stage for everything that followed. It was risky, no doubt, but Lola didn't come from comfort. She came from grit, and that meant betting on herself hard, even when the odds weren't stacked in her favor. Her rise wasn't instant, but it was inevitable. In a world that was slow to open doors for black performers, especially women, Lola kicked them down in heels. She brought her whole self to the stage, talent, charm, and a don't mess with me confidence that made people stop mid-sentence. Her career roots. It all kicked off in 1958 when teenage Lola landed her first real gig, opening for none other than Dinah Washington in a Philly nightclub. Yes, the Dinah Washington, queen of blues, the kind of voice that could break your heart and fix it in the same verse. Dinah wasn't just the headliner that night, and when she handed Lola that mic, she cracked open the door to a whole new world. Not long after, Lola was dancing in a chorus line in Atlantic City. Glamorous? Not exactly. But it put her in the path of Sammy Davis Jr., and that changed everything. Davis spotted her, saw the spark, and cast her in his 1964 Broadway hit Golden Boy. Just like that, Lola went from background dancer to center stage. Later that year, Lola flipped the script by launching a music career. Her debut single, My Baby, hit the airwaves in 1965 under Mercury Records. A few years later, she'd be recording under Frank Sinatra's label, Reprise, with a voice that could hold its own next to her fierce stage presence. And then, Italy happened. In 1966, she snagged a role in A Man Called Adam, starring alongside Davis, Ossie Davis, and Cicely Tyson. But instead of hanging around for another stateside part, Lola packed her bags and took over Italian cinema and TV like it was nothing. She starred in 3 films, including the spaghetti western Lola Colt, danced alongside Italian icon Mina on TV, and casually became fluent in Italian. They called her the Black Venus. And really, what else would you call a woman that magnetic? While juggling shows, movies, and global tours, Lola also reunited with Golden Boy for a London revival. Oh, and she was still touring with Davis. Basically, Lola was overbooked, but by 1969, she knew it was time to call the shots on her own terms. Ending her tight professional relationship with Sammy Davis Jr. wasn't easy, but necessary. As she told TV Guide, "If I didn't break away, I'd always be the little dancer with Sammy Davis Jr." And Lola Falana didn't come this far to be anyone's footnote. She wasn't content being the sidekick in someone else's story, even if that someone was a legend. She wanted and deserved more, so she claimed it. Because Lola Falana didn't wait to be seen. She made damn sure you couldn't look away. Hitting it big! By 1970, she was making serious waves. That year, she hit the big screen in The Liberation of L.B. Jones, a heavy, racially charged drama that gave Hollywood a reason to stop and look. The industry responded with a Golden Globe nomination for New Star of the Year. This was a rare acknowledgement for a black woman in film at the time. While other fresh faces were still crossing their fingers for second auditions, Lola was already collecting receipts. But she didn't park in that one-lane road. Also in 1970, she shook things up by posing for Playboy. This wasn't about shock value. This was Lola sending a message. You don't get to decide how I show up. I do. In a business built on controlling women's images, she took the reins and ran with them. Her confidence was revolutionary. Soon after, she broke new ground again, becoming the first black woman to model for Fabergé's Tigress perfume. Forget just being the face of a product, she was the moment. Before the phrase representation matters became mainstream, Lola was out there doing it in heels, eyeliner, and a whole lot of grace. She also took roles in what we now call blaxploitation films. But Lola never played second fiddle. Even when the plots were a little shaky or the budget screamed bootleg James Bond, she still walked in with movie star energy and left scenes better than she found them. While Hollywood was slowly figuring it out, television was already Lola's playground. In the early 70s, she was a regular on variety shows like The Joey Bishop Show, The Hollywood Palace, and anywhere that needed someone with style, rhythm, and perfect comedic timing. When Bill Cosby launched The New Bill Cosby Show in 1972, his first call was to Lola. Not just because she had chops, but because they went way back to their Philly days when he was hustling punchlines and she was already dazzling nightclub crowds before she could legally buy a drink. By the mid-70s, Lola was operating in full takeover mode. She also made stops on The Tonight Show, The Muppet Show, Laugh-In, and The Flip Wilson Show, shifting seamlessly between glamour, sass, and pure comic fire. She even dropped a disco single, There's a Man Out There Somewhere, which found its way onto Billboard's R&B chart. Because why not add recording artists to the resume? And Broadway. She wasn't done there either. In 1975, she returned as the lead in Dr. Jazz. Sure, the show wrapped up quickly, but Lola still walked away with a Tony nomination and a Theatre World Award. Even when the production flopped, she didn't. That's power. Vegas bound. By the time most performers were still trying to land opening slots, Lola Falana had taken the strip by storm and slapped her name on it in sequins. With some behind-the-scenes support from Sammy Davis Jr., Lola landed her own residency in Las Vegas. She wasn't opening for anyone, she was the show. Her name lit up the marquees at the Sands, the Riviera, and the MGM Grand. Night after night, it was standing room only. Tourists lined up in sweltering heat just for a chance to say, I saw Lola live. Eventually, the Aladdin Hotel came calling with an offer too big to ignore, $100,000 a week. Yes, you read that right. A week. That deal made her the highest paid female performer in Las Vegas at the time. Elvis Who. Her residency ran 20 weeks a year, and every show was a rhinestone-studded, high-octane spectacle. She could sing, she could dance, and she could outshine every feathered showgirl on the strip without even breaking a sweat. She had officially earned the title Queen of Las Vegas, and, let's be honest, no one dared challenge her for the throne. But Lola, being Lola, she wasn't about to get comfortable. While ruling Vegas, she kept one eye on her next move. At one point, she was cast to lead a reboot of the cult hit Vampira show, a spooky offbeat late-night series from the 50s. It was campy, eerie, and tailor-made for her sharp wit and bold presence. Unfortunately, the show never made it past development. It was just another entry in Hollywood's Hall of Almost. Not that she had time to pout. Before the dust settled, Lola slid right into a new role on the CBS soap opera Capitol. As Charity Blake, a glamorous cutthroat media mogul, she swapped her sequins for tailored suits, but she still brought all that signature Lola fire. The show may not have topped the ratings, but her presence lit up the screen. Once again, she proved she could pivot anywhere and still take command. This wasn't just an era of glitter and big contracts. This was Lola owning every room she walked into. Whether it was a sold-out Vegas stage or a network soundstage, she never waited for an invite. And in Vegas, that spotlight came with its own throne. The Carson interview. It wasn't a fight. There were no headlines, no public fallouts. One day, Lola Falana was a beloved regular on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And the next, gone, silenced, banned. Let's rewind the reel. Back in the 70s and 80s, if you were hot in Hollywood, you had to make a stop on Carson's couch. That chair was practically an unofficial award. And Lola, she didn't just show up, she owned the room. The banter between her and Johnny was quick, smart, and electric. He'd throw out a razor-sharp line, and she'd catch it midair and toss it back, cleaner and funnier. It was tennis with punchlines, and she was Serena before Serena. She didn't flinch, didn't fold, she flexed. And then, crickets. Flash to 1989. Lola was headlining at the Aladdin, cashing Vegas-sized checks, and stopped by The Tonight Show to promote the gig. But this time, the mood shifted. During the interview, Lola did something that most guests didn't dare. She got real. She talked openly about racism, about the discrimination she'd faced, and how it shaped her life and career. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even confrontational. It was just true. But the truth, especially from a black woman with a mic, can be dangerous, especially in a room built for punchlines, not perspectives. That might have already been enough to make Carson nervous. But things got even messier behind the scenes. Lola's Vegas residency happened to be at the Aladdin, the same hotel Wayne Newton had famously snatched from under Carson in a bitter bidding war. And Wayne, he and Johnny had a long, sour history. Let's just say it involved masculinity jokes, some very real threats, and Wayne marching into Johnny's office ready to throw hands. Seriously, he told Carson he'd kick his butt if the jokes didn't stop. And guess who was close friends with Wayne Newton? Yep, Lola. So there she was, promoting a show at Wayne's hotel, speaking truth to power, and reminding everyone in the room that she wasn't just there to smile and twirl. She came with integrity, loyalty, and spine. That didn't sit well with a late-night legend who wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a woman who couldn't be rattled. After that, no more invitations, no explanations, just shadow banned. And she wasn't alone. Carson's so-called blacklist included stars like Barbra Streisand, for a flimsy excuse, Charles Grodin for a joke, and Rich Little for doing a Johnny impression that didn't land. It didn't take much. But here's what matters. Lola Falana didn't need The Tonight Show to shine. Her talent, charm, and work ethic kept her booked, beloved, and unbothered. While Carson's couch cooled down, Lola's name stayed lit up in Vegas and beyond. Her absence from late night said a lot, but none of it was about Lola. It was about who got uncomfortable when she refused to dim her light. Wayne v. Carson. Back in the golden age of Vegas showbiz, Wayne Newton was more than just the guy who sang Danke Schoen. He was Las Vegas. By 1980, Newton wasn't just headlining the Strip. He was running it. Earning millions, selling out shows, and flashing that all-American charm, he had become Mr. Vegas. But offstage, he was about to face a very real, very bitter feud with one of the most powerful men in television, Johnny Carson. Wayne's rise started early. He was still in high school when he got his first Vegas gig in 1959. He wasn't suave like Sinatra or cool like Dean Martin. He had a youthful look, a high-pitched voice, and wasn't exactly the tall, chiseled crooner the public was used to. But that didn't stop him. It became part of his story, and unfortunately, also part of the punchlines. That's where Carson comes in. At first, things were friendly. Newton appeared on The Tonight Show more than 30 times. The two shared laughs, screen time, and even a mutual respect. That was until the jokes started to hit below the belt. According to Newton, Carson's comedy took a sudden turn. Instead of playful banter, Johnny began making jabs about Wayne's masculinity. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't funny to Newton. "I considered him a friend," Wayne later said, "but he turned it into something ugly." Then came the Aladdin Hotel drama, and everything exploded. Carson and Newton both wanted to buy the property. The Aladdin had ties to shady dealings in the past, but it was prime real estate in Vegas. Newton ended up getting the deal. Carson did not take that well. After the sale, Johnny's jokes got meaner. Other comics joined in. The late-night digs became relentless. For Newton, it crossed a line. So after trying and failing to reach out privately, he decided to handle it the Vegas way, face to face. One day, Newton walked into Carson's Burbank office, uninvited, and let him have it. According to Newton, he looked Carson in the eye and said, "These jokes stop. Now, or I'll kick your A." And just like that, the laughter stopped, for Carson at least. But the grudge didn't. Carson's team reportedly fumed over the Aladdin deal, with his business partner calling it a betrayal. Carson pulled out of Vegas completely, never returning. Newton, meanwhile, kept performing, kept cashing checks, and never stopped telling his side of the story. Did they ever reconcile? For a guy known for smooth vocals and sparkly suits, Wayne Newton has lived through enough real-life drama to fill an entire season of The Sopranos. By the mid-1980s, Newton wasn't just battling rumors, he was drowning in them. The Whisper campaign said he wasn't just friendly with certain Las Vegas power players. He was allegedly working with the mob. Accusations flew. He was a frontman, a pawn, maybe even under pressure from the wrong crowd. It got so out of hand, Newton had to go public, telling the Los Angeles Times in 1986 that it was all nonsense. But in private, he had his suspicions about who lit the match. According to Newton, all fingers pointed to one man, Johnny Carson. Yep, the same late-night legend who'd once welcomed Newton to his couch dozens of times. By the 80s, though, their relationship had soured, badly, and Newton didn't mince words. On Larry King Live, he flat out said he believed Carson used his media influence to push the mob rumors and muddy Newton's name. That theory might sound bold, but Newton had receipts. In 1980, Newton had edged Carson out in a high-stakes deal to buy the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas. The hotel was a huge win, except it had ties to sketchy past ownership, and that history came back with a vengeance. Suddenly, stories about Newton's connections were everywhere. Coincidence? Newton didn't think so. So he hit back. Newton filed a $5.2 million libel lawsuit against Carson's network, NBC, and won. At the time, it was the biggest libel verdict against a media company in Hollywood history. For a minute, it seemed like justice had been served, but then came the reversal. In 1990, a federal appeals court threw it out, saying the network's reporting hadn't been proven recklessly false. Newton didn't get a cent, and the damage was already done. By 1992, the financial fallout hit hard. He filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, citing mounting debt, much of it tied to the legal battle. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, the IRS showed up. In 2005, the year Carson died, Newton was ordered to pay millions in back taxes. Still, Wayne Newton is nothing if not a survivor. Despite the lawsuits, the losses, and the lingering tabloid fog, he clawed his way back, thanks to the one place that never turned its back on him, Las Vegas. His residencies brought in serious cash, and over time, he rebuilt what the courtroom nearly destroyed. Wayne didn't get the Hollywood ending he might have hoped for, but he got something better, a comeback. And in true showman fashion, he did it under the same neon lights where it all began. Carson had a reputation. Back in the day, landing a seat across from Johnny, Carson wasn't just a milestone, it was a whole career launch. The Tonight Show wasn't some casual promo stop, it was the golden gate of fame. You killed it with Carson, you were in. You messed up with Carson, you were done. And not, oh, let's try again next year. Done. Perma-banned. Johnny had charm, sure, but he also had a long memory and a short fuse when it came to what he saw as disrespect. While some bans over the years turned out to be gossip, such as rumors about Sylvester Stallone getting iced out, he wasn't, others were painfully real. And if Johnny put you on that silent list, you could forget about plugging your next album, movie, or even a book of knock-knock jokes. There was no official process, no press release. One day, you were in the green room with a cup of coffee. The next, you were blacklisted with no warning and often no explanation. It didn't take a full-blown scandal to get banned. Sometimes all it took was a joke Carson didn't like. Charles Grodin teased him once about not being invited to a card game, off the list. Barbra Streisand canceled an appearance with what Johnny thought was a flimsy excuse. Banned. Rich Little did a Carson impression Johnny didn't love. Goodbye. And this wasn't just a Johnny problem. When Jay Leno took over, the legacy continued. Getting on The Tonight Show still mattered, and getting booted off was still a big deal. Leno inherited not just the couch, but the quiet blacklist too. Sure, Carson was a genius of late night. He changed TV forever, but he was also a guy with a steel-trap grudge policy. If you got on his bad side, even by accident, it could be a wrap for your late-night future. The funny thing is, Carson never announced these bans. There was no ceremony, just silence. Your agent would call and never hear back. Your segment would be postponed indefinitely. And you'd slowly realize you weren't welcome anymore. For an industry built on attention, that kind of quiet was deafening. So next time someone calls late-night TV light entertainment, remember this. Behind the laughter, the laughs, and the legendary monologues, The Tonight Show could also be the coldest room in Hollywood, especially if you made Johnny Carson mad. Back to the icon herself. She could sing, she could dance, she could command a Vegas stage like nobody's business. But Lola Falana's love life, that was a whole show of its own, and not one the public was always meant to see. Somewhere between 1965 and 1968, Lola found herself in a situation that would send shockwaves through Hollywood. A romantic relationship with her mentor, Sammy Davis Jr. At the time, Davis was a powerhouse. He was one of the most famous entertainers in the country, and a man navigating the tightrope of being a black performer in white-dominated showbiz. He was also married to Swedish actress May Britt. Their interracial marriage had already drawn intense public scrutiny, especially in a decade still resisting integration on and off screen. Enter Lola, young, magnetic, rising fast. Davis had taken her under his wing professionally, casting her in Golden Boy and helping launch her career. But the line between mentor and more than friend blurred behind the scenes, and eventually it all came out. Davis confessed the affair to May Britt himself, and the fallout was swift. The marriage ended in 1968, and the story turned into one of those Hollywood whispers everyone pretended not to talk about, while absolutely talking about it. For Lola, the headlines weren't kind, but the scandal didn't stop her momentum. If anything, she doubled down on building her career, keeping her focus on music, TV, and Vegas stages. She didn't defend, deny, or dwell. She just kept showing up and showing out. Then came 1970 and a shift in her love story. That year, Lola married Feliciano Butch Tavares Jr., a member of the popular soul group Tavares. The band was all about smooth vocals and harmony, and for a while, it seemed like Lola had found a little of that in her own life. But the spotlight's no easy place for a marriage. Between Lola's growing fame and Butch's rising success with Tavares, the two led fast-paced, high-profile lives. Glammed up red carpets, tour schedules, and industry chaos don't always leave room for quiet connection. The couple eventually split in 1975, ending a 5-year marriage that had been far more private than her previous relationship headlines. While she rarely spoke publicly about either breakup, those chapters clearly shaped her path. After the 70s, Lola's focus shifted. She moved from love affairs and stardom to something deeper, quieter, and more spiritual. One thing's for sure, Lola Falana's love life wasn't some sideshow. It was part of the main event. Intertwined with legends, caught in controversies, and filled with moments that defined not just her own legacy, but the culture around her. And through it all, she never stopped dancing forward. Lola's later career. She once ruled the Vegas stage in rhinestones and high heels. But by the late 90s, Lola Falana had quietly stepped away. She wasn't pushed, not forgotten, but called. In her prime, she was everywhere. TV specials, Billboard charts, and top billing in showrooms packed wall to wall. She wasn't just a triple threat. She was the main event. But underneath the glamour was a private battle that would change everything. In 1987, Lola suffered a devastating relapse of multiple sclerosis. The disease hit her hard, leaving her partially blind, unable to move the left side of her body, and with her voice and hearing impaired. For most people, that would have ended everything. For Lola, it became a turning point. She spent nearly a year and a half recovering, and during that time, something shifted. She describes it as more than healing. It was spiritual. In her words, she felt the presence of the Lord. That experience moved her so deeply that she converted to Catholicism in 1988. And from that moment on, she redefined what success looked like. Yes, she returned to the stage briefly. In 1987, she performed again in Las Vegas, but it wasn't about fame anymore. Her priorities had changed. And when another MS flare-up hit her in 1996, she didn't go back to the Strip. She went home to Philadelphia, where she lived quietly with her parents and focused on faith, family, and purpose. By 1995, she'd made her final mark on music, recording Don't Cry, married with Catholic artist Joseph Lee Hooker. This was a soft, soulful song filled with grief, healing, and hope. It wasn't a chart topper. It wasn't meant to be. It was her goodbye letter to the industry, and her first steps toward a very different calling. Today, Lola lives far from the lights of Vegas. Still based in Las Vegas, but no longer in the casinos, she now travels not for concerts, but for spiritual talks. She shares stories of transformation and healing, connecting with people who remember her as a star, but walk away seeing something deeper. Her life now revolves around the Lambs of God Ministry, an organization she founded to help orphan children in sub-Saharan Africa. Working with groups like Save Sub-Saharan Orphans, Lola focuses on education, shelter, and giving kids the shot at life she believes everyone deserves. No press, no tour buses, just hands-on, heart-first service. Her final known performance? 1997 at Wayne Newton's Theater in Branson, Missouri. Fitting, since Wayne was a lifelong friend, one of the few who understood her past and respected her present. Lola didn't disappear. She chose something more meaningful. After decades on the biggest stages, she found peace in faith and purpose in service. And in a town built on applause, she walked away when the crowd was still clapping. If you thought her talent alone could keep her on TV screens, think again. Politics, power plays, and personal alliances often called the shots behind the scenes. Lola Falana stood tall, even when the doors quietly closed. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe for more untold celebrity stories, and drop a comment with your favorite Lola moment, or who you want us to cover next. Because in Hollywood, the real drama doesn't always happen on stage.